Google launches a new group chat app, Warren Buffett bets on Apple, Amazon might sell its own private label groceries, and more. It's Monday, May 16th, and this is Crunch Report. If you remember Google+, you probably remember that it wasn't exactly a huge success, but the company isn't giving up on its efforts to go social. Today, it launched a new app called Spaces, where small groups of users can chat and share content. The big selling point of Spaces is the fact that it's integrated with existing Google services. You can access things like Google Search and YouTube without having to leave the app. Also, once you've shared something in a space, it becomes searchable pretty naturally for Google. The company says this could be used by everyone from study groups to comic book fans who want to chat. The company is also rolling out individual spaces for each session at its Google I/O Developer Conference this week. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway has disclosed that it owns more than $1 billion worth of Apple shares. For those of you who haven't been following the details of Apple's finances and stock price, let's just say things haven't been going great. In fact, after a disappointing second quarter, the stock price has fallen so badly that Apple has lost $40 billion in market capitalization. But for some investors at least, that means Apple shares look like a bargain right now, particularly if they think the company might bounce back, so you'll probably see other big investors making similar moves. Sometimes this kind of purchase is a prelude to activist investors pushing for big changes, but probably not this time. Apple executives tend to ignore those kinds of demands, and crazy as it sounds, a $1 billion stake may not be big enough to make a difference. Today, you can already buy groceries from Amazon, so maybe it's natural for the company to follow in the footsteps of many other supermarkets by offering products through its own private label brands. You know, the way you can buy 365 branded products from Whole Foods. In other words, you might start seeing Amazon selling both perishable and non-perishable items, including baby food, tea, coffee, and spices, under brand names like Happy Belly, Wickedly Prime, and Mama Bear, at least according to a new report in the Wall Street Journal. The journal says the brands could be launched later this month and would only be available to Amazon Prime members. This isn't a totally new area for the company, by the way, since it already sells things like clothing and consumer electronics through Amazon Basics and other brand names. I don't know how many of you have been to one of the Momofuku restaurants, but trust me, they are delicious. Now founder David Chang has launched a delivery-only restaurant called Ando. Chang is pitching this as another Momofuku restaurant, except that it's on-demand and delivery-only without a dine-in experience. It might seem cruel for me to bring this up for those of you who aren't in New York and can't order the food yet, but I think it's still newsworthy because Ando was developed in partnership with Expa, the startup studio created by Uber co-founder Garrett Camp, and also because Chang is an investor and chief culinary officer at food delivery startup Maple. However, Expa's Human Radfar told us the food delivery market is diverse enough that Ando and Maple don't have to compete with each other directly in the same way that different Momofuku restaurants don't necessarily compete. All right, we've got another story about something that a big company might do. In this case, the report comes from The Telegraph, which says the BBC is planning to launch its own subscription streaming service called Britflix. Apparently, it's working on the service with competitor ITV and a number of production companies, including NBC Universal. It seems like the British government is pushing in this direction, with Culture Secretary John Whittingdale releasing a white paper last week calling on the BBC to find additional sources of revenue. Whittingdale told The Telegraph, quote, "If they want to explore that kind of thing, we'd encourage them. There may come a moment in the future where all television is delivered online, and if you do that, it becomes a more realistic, practical possibility if you wanted to move towards an element of voluntary subscription." That's the report for today. I'm Anthony Ha. Crunch Report airs every weekday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on TechCrunch.com. You can also find us on iTunes and on YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow.